allowed at this time, which is really contrary to what the Supreme Court said. But as I'm going to leave it over to our guests to discuss. I'd like to remind us that this is an audience-centered program, which means you can call us at any time to weigh in on the conversation and tell us how you feel, especially how this new Naira notes scarcity or crunch has affected you, your business, your family, and everything. The numbers to call are 090-3222-9797, 090-3222-9797. You can call 081-8222-2205, 081-8222-2205. The other number to call is 080-8222-2037. Take that again, 080-8222-2037. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll be hearing fully from the men in the house on how to tackle these recent issues, or what it means really in the larger scheme of rule of law and everything. Stay tuned.
Investigations, special reports, analysis, and breaking news. Premium Times, a leading multimedia news platform, brings to you every minute stories that helps you make informed decisions and hold public officials, individuals, and organizations accountable. We have cartoons, videos, podcasts, and other interesting content for your delight. For timely update on politics, entertainment, sport, and business, visit our website on www.premiumtimesng.com and follow us on all our social media platforms. Don't miss out.
Thank you and welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Premium Times Half Hour, brought to you by Premium Times on Citizen FM 93.7. And we have here live in the studio Mr. Ade Adeshomoju, who is Premium Times' head of judicial desk. And we also have in the studio Mr. Frank Cheche. We is a lawyer, so it's okay to say that we have the law in the studio this morning to help us understand issues. And I'd like to start with Mr. Adeshomoju of Premium Times. Did you listen to the president's broadcast this morning?
Yes, I did.
What were the few or many germane points you heard him say? What were the things you heard that stood out for you?
Yes, thank you, Amaka, for this opportunity to talk to Nigerians. I did, like you rightly said at the beginning of this program, you said many of us woke up to hear the president's voice first thing this morning. So I'm part of the privileged Nigerians that also listen to the president. And what I heard the president say, it's the key point he actually made was extending the validity of 200 naira note up to April, and actually emphasize the point that 500 naira note, the old 500 naira and 1,000 naira notes will no longer be valid. And he also spoke about how the policy of the new naira design has really affected positively the economy. He talked about how it has reduced money laundering, how it has stopped or reduced kidnapping for ransom, and a whole lot of other issues. So those are the key issues that really struck me listening to the president this morning.
So, quick follow-up on that. Do you think that any of these things the president has said, is it reflective of what's going on currently in Nigeria, ranging from money laundering to kidnapping and every other thing he said? Do you think that's the reality on ground?
Yeah. So, I think it is difficult to really assess or really scrutinize what the president has said at this point, because the program is still, the full scale of the implementation of the program is still unfolding. So it's difficult to really say. For instance, when he said that the policy is already affecting, it's already influencing 2023 election. How can one really assess that? So, but what I know is that as a Nigerian, I still don't know how it had benefited me or people around me, and I still, in the next few days or weeks, I still don't know how that can really, really, really benefit me. So as Nigeria, because we really, of course, the president's speech really left so many things unsaid. So we really do not know how much of these 200 naira notes will be released. We don't know how much is going to. We don't know the gap between what we have currently and what we actually need to sustain the financial sector, the economy, so far for Nigerians to have smooth access to their money in banks. So we do not know how much of the gap. We don't know the gap. We don't know how much the CBN is willing to release to bridge the gap. So we are still, we are still where we were before the president spoke this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Adi Adeshomoju. So it's also important to point out that before, the recalling of old Naira notes, there was 3.23 trillion Naira in circulation.
Yes.
And the president said that since this scheme started, we've been able, or the central bank has been able to recall 2.1 trillion Naira. And before then, there was only 500 billion Naira permanently within the banking sector, and the rest of the money was, floating outside. Which, leaves question to, where is the rest of the money? Because we are all complaining we don't have money. So out of 3.23 trillion, you've recalled 2.1 trillion. What happens to the other parts of the money? Why are Nigerians, in a sad situation? And we saw what happened in Delta, in Benin yesterday. Yes. I think Kwara as well. People burning down banks, and we are almost sliding into a state of anarchy. But I'm just going to hold that there and move over to Mr. Tietie. Question on the Supreme Court's ruling. Our monies remain legal tender, the Supreme Court said just yesterday. And then this morning, the president says only 200 Naira is useful, is still legal tender. So 500 and 1,000 are illegal tenders. I hope that's correct. What does this mean for a government that insists it's a respecter of the rule of law, and the Supreme Court says monies are still legal tender, and you come up the next morning to say only a particular denomination remains illegal tender? Mr. Tietie.
I think I had to heave a sigh there, because there is very worrisome. The reason is that I have imagined the implications of tearing down fundamental institutions that hold the Federal Republic of Nigeria together. The ethos, the philosophy, the legal basis for the existence of the public order and legal order as we have it in Nigeria has been threatened by the way the Supreme Court and its rulings, judgments and orders have been treated, not only by the executive branch of government, but by the citizenry entirely. It's very worrisome for our democracy. The democracy rests on the foundation of the rule of law, the understanding that law backs the majority of the people. So it's not necessarily a government by the majority, but it's a government that is legitimate, flowing from the popular will of the people. But in Nigeria, where we practice presidential federalism with the supremacy of the Constitution and sovereignty lying on the people, to which government must serve according to the provisions of the Constitution, what we have is a very bad situation, where the Supreme Court will make a pronouncement and it will be further interpreted by lawyers and by legal personalities, and institutions and agencies of government have been created by laws of the National Assembly, becomes a real problem. So if I must address your question directly, I will say that, like I've maintained in some other forums, whatever the letters or words or statements or declarations that a court makes as such is tantamount to law. And particularly with the Supreme Court that holds the finality of the exercise of judicial powers in Nigeria, whatever it says is law and it holds. Now, the interesting part of it is that by our own legal arrangement as a country, it is the responsibility of the executive, starting with the personality of the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, to ensure that all laws made by the National Assembly and all decisions made by courts are enforced within the geographical entity referred to as Nigeria. So, when the president does an act that directly contravenes the authority and legal stand of the Supreme Court, it becomes very worrisome, very weakening, because at that point, we see our democracy not only being threatened, but about to be torn down, and that should not be. For us, it should be resisted with the correct notion, and the correct notion is that society is run according to law. It is for the purpose of creating order. And in elementary law, we said law is an instrument of ensuring public order. Where you hear cases of disorder in Edo and Delta, it's as a result of a breach of law. When you hear people calling the Supreme Court all sort of names, denigrating it and abusing the justices for simply making a temporary order, it shows you the creeping anomaly that is facing the Nigerian society. As a country that has once witnessed the civil war, we should quickly learn a lesson that when law is discarded, when the standards of law prescribed by law are discarded and not respected by both those who run government, institutions, and individuals, what happens is a society that inches to anarchy, and it often ends in conflicts, violent conflicts, where law no longer reigns, but force, a competition of force, might. That is not good for Nigeria.
So I'm going to hold you there and ask a quick question on how the partial disregard, I call it partial disregard because, the president assented to the continuous use of a denomination and disregarded the other. So it's a partial disregard.
It is a total disregard.
Very well.
The reason is, it is not in the place of the president to even make any comment concerning a decision the Supreme Court has made.
So my question then is, how does this affect post-elections? As it's tradition in Nigeria, we know there will be a lot of tribunals, people going to court to challenge different things after the election. And then we have this situation at hand. The Supreme Court has made a judgment or said this is how it should be. And the number one citizen has, ignored, right? Like I said, it's a total violation of what the Supreme Court stands for and what the law says. How would this play out post-election? Have you tried to think about this?
Have you wondered the fate of the coming elections before talking about post-election concerns?
Interesting.
The point is this. We understand that the president and those who are his advisors are concerned about influencing elections with so much cash that is in circulation, whereas we do not agree yet that the cash that has been in circulation is even sufficient for the Nigerian economy, the largest economy supposedly in Africa, with a large number of productive population that is staggering, that actually is suffering from issues of inflation. And also the problem is really more of developmental as a result of poor infrastructural investments in the past. So we are not even talking about how beneficial this policy is in the here and now. Because if you go into the street as a result of scarcity of naira, which has created an unusual desperation among the populace to the extent that they will clutch at a straw just to survive. So now I see a situation where food vendors and farmers are the ones who are hardest hit, because in the desperation to sell their perishable goods, they've got to trade off their profits. So And then we thought erroneously that inflation was coming down until the National Bureau of Statistics released its figures yesterday and said inflation has actually become worse in the wake of the Naira redesign policy and cash withdrawal limit. So the thing is this: when you mention election, and the idea is this, what the president and his advisors thought they were going to cure has actually been exacerbated, because, as I can prove from statements that have been widely made in the media, credited to some individuals, it is actually true. Because for an individual who will have to pay 2,000 naira, and in some cases that I can testify to 4,000 naira, in order to be able to liquidate his money, 10,000 of his money, it's a very pathetic situation. So if vote buying would have actually happened, and somebody wanted to buy vote with 10,000 naira, there are now persons who are desperate under these circumstances who will readily sell their votes for 1,000 naira or 500 naira just to get by. And then so I think that particular aim of the policy has been quite counterproductive. So we're building up to the elections, and when you see all these uprisings, this discontentment, this violent expression of inability to understand why persons who kept their money in trust to the bank can't access them, where transactions are being affected as a result of issues of poor network, where apps and bank apps are failing. So the election itself is being threatened. So we're talking about post-election. It's about hoping that an election holds, and then we get a new president who will ultimately decide to review these policies. But for now, our concern should be with our president, who has sworn to an oath, or the oath of office, that he will uphold all the laws and he will uphold all the decisions made by courts of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If he's failing, it's not a personal thing. It's something that is affecting the entire federation, and it goes beyond him. So somebody, somewhere, somehow, he has to be called to order, not to question, not to be the one circumventing and frustrating the decisions of the Supreme Court. In this case, it's not even a judgment, but however, there is a sort of sanctity that is attached to every letter, every word, and every pronouncement that comes from the court of law. In this case, the highest court of law, the Supreme Court of Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chiche. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll still be here discussing the president's speech this morning, the Supreme Court's verdict, and the new Naira redesign. Stay tuned.
Brings to you every minute stories that helps you make informed decisions and hold public officials, individuals, and organizations accountable. We have cartoons, videos, podcasts, and other interesting content for your delight. For timely update on politics, entertainment, sport, and business, visit our website on www.premiumtimesng.com and follow us on all our social media platforms. Don't miss out.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Premium Times Half Hour, brought to you by Premium Times on Citizen FM 93.7, and we have been discussing the president's speech this morning and the new Naira notes. I think we have a call. Just hold on. Hello? Okay, so we lost that caller. We have been discussing, of course, the new Naira notes and the president's policy. We have in the studio Ade Adeshumaju and Frank Chiche, who have been discussing this issue with me. And it's important, the last point Mr. Chiche made before we went on a quick break, the fact that we needed to be sure we would even have an election before thinking about post-election. Hold on. I have a caller here. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Patrick. I'm calling from Newtown. Kudos to the lawyer. This morning I asked a question this morning concerning the Supreme Court order that the old Naira notes of 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira should continue to be legal tender. And Mr. President's speech this morning just contradict whatever it is that Supreme Court order has set in place. So my own question to the lawyer is this: what is the implication? Can the Supreme Court now do anything or call the president to order, or is there anything the Supreme Court can do? That's my question to the lawyer now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Frank, that's over to you. So he's asking if the Supreme Court can do anything now that the president has come up to say something different from what they said yesterday.
The Supreme Court won't do anything. That is one thing that you must appreciate. The Supreme Court relies on the inherent powers it has, and those such inherent powers flow from the constitutional provision that whatever he says is correct, whatever he says is right and best for the situation. So the person whose responsibility it is to implement the decision of the Supreme Court is the one actually violating it at this moment, because he is the head of the executive, and the executive consists of a lot, including the armed forces, the police, and even when you have officers of the court that are referred to as sheriff, who are supposed to enforce the orders of the court, such sheriffs make application to the Inspector General of Police, for example, to supply the required number of policemen to carry out such orders. In this case, you cannot sue the president. You cannot actually sue the president in his person, especially for criminal or any criminal offense. What is actually happening under a normal procedure amounts to a contempt of the court, disregarding the court. What should now happen is that one of the lawyers to the plaintiff in this case, who feels that the party, however, unfortunately, or rather I would say fortunately, it is the Attorney General of the Federation that is representing the entire Federation, which includes the President and the government and the federal government of Nigeria. So what happens now? Who is disobedient? But when you look at the content of the order, that specifically mentions this, the federal government acting through the Central Bank of Nigeria and through the commercial banks, through agencies, department, ministries, and other servants of the federal government. If one can therefore decide to, as a lawyer who is acting for any of the plaintiffs, can now decide to make an application to the court under the regular contempt proceedings, and then proceed to arrest any of these persons holding the positions, whether bank managers, CBN governor, any of them, with the aim of committing them to prison for disregarding the order of court. But that cannot apply to the president.
Interesting response there, and it's sad to see that the Supreme Court can't do anything. But before we wrap up, I'd like to have your final thoughts on the issue in 1 minute. So, Ms. Adia, I'd like you to speak to, the point the president made about money influencing politics, and how this will affect people trying to vote and vote buying generally in the elections. And for you, Mr. THA, I'd like you to address the whole, overall rule of law question and what this means for Nigeria as a country that has a constitution. Mr. Ade.
Okay, thank you, Amaka. You see, before we even go to the issue of election, we know that our election in Nigeria has been really affected by acts of impunity. We are in a democracy, and I hope that one day we'll have leaders who really understand the weight of responsibility that they bear. In the modern world that we are unlikely to have a leader of a nation taking guns and shooting someone on the street, or whipping someone, or holding somebody in detention by himself. But a president, by his action and conduct, can do a lot more, can encourage impunity. And coming directly from the president this morning, I mean, Mr. Tete has laid the foundation about violation of the rule of law and the Supreme Court's ruling in this particular case. So if you look at that, what we are even seeing now is that the president almost regarded, because he made a scant mention of the pronouncement during in his speech. What it means now is that the president is just seeing the order of the Supreme Court as a ranting of some group of people, and as a matter of fact, it's a continuous case, it's an ongoing case. It's more or less saying that whatever happens at the end of the day in the judgment is of no use to him, because he has even fixed a date. He has fixed a date for when the 200 naira note, the old 200 naira note that he has to be released to the circulation will end. So of course, use is the case that is still pending in court. So I see this as an encouragement of impunity. And going into 2023 election, we know the role of impunity, how impunity has affected our election in terms of rigging, in terms of violence. What lessons are Nigerian learning as we proceed into the election? So, like Mr. Titi also argued, which I agree, the issue of the influence of this policy on election is detrimental. What has really happened? It has made vote buying cheaper. Somebody who has been sleeping at ATM centers for days and couldn't get 5,000 naira. I mean, when he is now approached on the election day with 2,000 naira, 3,000 naira. I mean, how can you predict? I mean, what is your prediction of the response of such person in that situation? So it's a worrisome, it's an unsettling situation, and it's so sad that this is coming from the president and leaves one the feeling that is Nigeria actually on the path, or if it has not become a basket case already. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeshomoju. Over to you, Mr. Tietie.
Our only hope as a democracy is to practice the rule of law and nothing more. It's usually not convenient. It takes a lot of discipline, especially by those who control state power. To think that they have such enormous discretion in the use of state power, yet subject themselves to law, is a difficult practice. Yet, that is what will save our country. That is what will establish the standards that will preserve this democracy and make us move forward, make progress,